Welcome to Throw Off the Lines, the podcast where we navigate life's changes, explore new horizons, and embrace the journey. I'm your host, Stephanie York, an executive coach with a passion for charting new courses on the water and in life. Ready for some total change? Let's dive in. Hi there, and welcome to Throw Off the Lines. Today, I'm happy to say we have one of my lifelong friends, Dr. Lisa Smith, on with us. She's the director of the Center for Anxiety and Related Disorder at Boston University and the founding director of the Boston University Psychological Services Center. As a clinician and supervisor, she specializes in the provision of evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy for a wide range of emotional problems. And we're very lucky to be talking to her today and looking forward to some insights. Today, I think we'll be discussing the fact that we all want to live a meaningful life, but there are some sticking points often in getting there. And Lisa, why don't you pick up from there?
All right. Well, thank you so much for welcoming me into your podcast. I take every opportunity to talk about emotions and how they work in our lives. And so it's really nice to have a different arena to talk about these things. In my work at the center, I talk to a lot of patients who are struggling and are intentionally engaging in psychotherapy to address some of these sticking points in life. And so I'm also hoping through this podcast to talk about people who are just like struggling on an everyday basis, that it's a continuum. And I think that in our day-to-day lives, you and me and we all can benefit from thinking about our emotions and how we manage it and trying to optimize it. And whether that be just like listening to a podcast or maybe seeking treatment on your own, there's like a lot of ways that we can interact with this goal.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. Welcome. I'm so excited because I think that, you know, there's so much information out there and I love talking about emotional regulation. I have a future podcast I think I'm going to do about it, but I wanted to get some scientifically backed support instead of just podcasts and, you know, fluffy YouTube videos. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We do at the center try to ground everything in the empirical best practice and what we know about things. So there were a couple of psychologists who worked at the center for a period of time in a research study, and they created this framework about emotions and life that really stuck with me. Their names are Sue Orsillo and Liz Romer. They have a book, The Mindful Way Through Anxiety. And one of the the metaphors or one of the exercises that they brought to the clinic, they termed the problem. So I wanted to share the problem that we all have in life with you today.
Okay.
And this problem is that we want a meaningful life.
Yeah.
Right? And so whatever that means to each one of us, our own personal values are very individually chosen. It's kind of like, well, if you're a Pepsi person, if you're a Coke person, like it doesn't matter which one you are, but you have a preference and it's a natural preference and like that's your thing. And so values are that way too. And so we want to have a life full of meaning and the values that are for us. And the second thing is that we would also love to be able to do that in a very convenient, comfortable way.
Okay. So that's interesting. I'll have a copy of the book in the show notes in case anybody wants to look that book up. So just know that. And so I love that values are so personal and we want to live a meaningful life, but why aren't they capable of that?
Well, you can see perhaps if you put these two things together side by side, how there might be some tension there, right? I want to do all these things. And if it was just as easy as that, we'd all be doing maxing ourselves out every day, every moment, every day.
Superhumans.
Superhumans, right? Yeah. And yet there's the problem that I'm talking about today, which is pursuing a meaningful life almost always, if not always, brings us into connection with negative, aversive thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Okay.
So it's hard to have one without the other. It's hard to get that meaning without some of the cost to getting the meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So when people come to you, why would somebody pursue a professional if they've got a lot of resources online, YouTube videos and podcasts and things that are always trying to tell them how to optimize their life?
That's a good question. So it's a very individual decision at what point you feel like an external perspective would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit of personal choice. Like lots of people do educate themselves through media and podcasts and books and whatnot, and are able to come up with solutions to this tension between meaning and comfort. And some people, for whatever reason, their life circumstances or kind of the sensitivity of their emotional system that they inherited in their genes,
Yeah.
may feel stuck, like they have maximized what they can do independently and want some external guidance to it. So an example of that decision is like working out. Like I work out, I'll see a lot of like videos on how to work out the best. There's no shortage of people who casually weigh in on like best practices with working out and health. And I can get pretty far down the road with that. And yet maybe I injured myself and need a little extra boost. Maybe I've been maxing out the solutions that have been offered to me casually. I'm like, oh, a personal trainer would actually help me get to the next level. So those, I think, are two examples of when you would want some external guidance. And it's the same thing for our mental health.
Okay.
That like we manage on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes you just want a little bit more and you go to that external guidance, or sometimes you got injured. Sometimes you had maybe some really hard stuff coming your way in life and you want, again, that structure and that expertise that a professional can provide.
I think some people avoid meeting with a therapist or a professional, and I strongly encourage people to seek out professional help if they're struggling and can't seem to move past a depression or overwhelming thoughts. I mean, a professional is so important. But sometimes they feel like, oh, I'm going to sign on with somebody, and then I have to be paying them and working with them for a really long time. And do you think that's the case?
It is not always the case. So with the kinds of behavior therapy approach that we use at the center, it's intentionally designed to be as short as possible. It's a course of therapy.
Oh, okay.
It's not like a lifelong, it's not like year-long pursuit. I always feel better if I have a therapist just on standby or, year after decade. I think that there are times when that can be a real support to people. And I also think that there are situations that call for just a quicker course of it.
Okay. Well, that's encouraging because I do talk to people sometimes and they think, oh, I can't afford to pay a therapist for a year. And I'm like, no, I know that there's not courses. I wouldn't have called it that, but I can now. But CBT is a planned, prescriptive, step-by-step way to move through problems, right?
Yes.
Nice.
And so oftentimes if you work with a therapist to learn a bit more about it, anxiety, depression, emotions, learn a bit about how they work, learn about the kind of like the obstacles or the potholes that get in the way and what to do about it. If you take, I compare this a lot to taking a course. Like you go in, you speak with, or you receive some information from the teacher, you go home, you have homework in between to make sense out of it and to apply it. You go back to the teacher polishes it up, lends a little bit more insight, teaches you a little bit more, and you should have some real change at the end of it. And the course can be, a month, 6 months, that the time frame, you can find a situation where the time frame lasts as long as productive for you.
Okay.
And that it doesn't have to, at the outset, be this idea of a permanent thing or even like a lengthy, extended commitment.
I like that. Sometimes people ask me as a coach, how long do I have to work with you? How do you have a proof of success? And I always say it's It depends on you and how much you show up and if I'm the right connection for you. So same thing probably with a therapist. Is it the right connection? Is the right work? Are you getting something out of it? Yeah. So when
Absolutely. Same thing.
So when somebody's looking for a meaningful life and, they're struggling overcoming the cognitive dissonance of, both wanting they have these personal values and then the meaningful life, what are some responses that you would have for them in the type of therapy that you use?
Yeah. So we have this tension, like you said, between wanting these important things in our lives and the discomfort that happens in our pursuit of them. Mm-hmm. And so the way that these authors have broken it down is that there's a couple of different solutions that people gravitate toward in trying to resolve this tension. And so one of those solutions might be grounded largely in avoidance, that you're going to really lean into the comfort side of this equation. And although I do want meaningful things in my life, it's most meaningful for me to be comfortable at all times and to really maximize it. So I don't want to come into contact with negative thoughts or anxiety producing ideas. I don't want to feel bad. And that's one approach that if you lean into heavily to can be quickly problematic, end up very deeply problematic, because it's really just not possible to avoid situations that are uncomfortable.
Well, right? Sometimes it makes them worse.
And that's the second thing, is that the attempt to avoid them actually inflates it artificially. So, and this happens all the time with patients, and it happens to me in life too. And I'm sure to you and all of your listeners, you can think about a time where you maybe pulled back and you thought it was going to be comfortable and it caused more problems than it helped. So if we can think of a personal example, I'd like to try to play a musical instrument, right? It's not something that I've done in my life. I'd like to try something new. So I spend some money on the guitar and I'm supposed to practice. And then it's uncomfortable. My fingers are hurting and I sit down and I have all these thoughts maybe I'm not good. Maybe this is too hard. I haven't tried this before, and so you're coming into contact with some negativity about playing the instrument, negativity then about what that means to you, negativity in your body. And then you just avoid and you just put down the instrument and you're like, well, it would be so much easier for me not to engage with that I'm going to choose the avoidance solution.
Yeah, I talk to people all the time that are avoiding making phone calls for their business because they have a multitude of reasons to do it. And it's painful for them and they don't like how they sound and they don't think they have something good to say. Or I'm also out with my social friends and they want to meet somebody to date. And the dating websites are just cumbersome. Right now, they're toxic in some cases. And so they don't put themselves out and they're dealing with a lot of loneliness and dissatisfaction. Yeah.
So that's the price of the avoidance. So if you want someone to partner with, to share your life with, it can be difficult, right? It can be really painful to go through that dating process. And so if you just avoid the whole process out of, wanting to not feel that way, you get even more of the feeling. You get even more lonely. And then you escalate it. It gets even worse that now you feel lonely and you feel like it's your fault.
Yeah.
And that there's something wrong with you. When there's nothing wrong with you, it's just that you've been choosing an avoidance solution that isn't productive and it doesn't get you what you want. But the process of avoidance tricks you into thinking it's you when it is not.
Right. And then you build layers as it becomes more and more uncomfortable. Hey, I really got to go meet somebody, but now I feel bad about myself and I feel bad about my technique. And then I just have more reasons to feel bad about the whole thing and I'm trying to avoid it more. And now I'm in a pit.
And now you're in a pit.
Yeah.
So avoidance digs a hole and you end up digging yourself into a deeper and deeper pit by over relying on avoidance as the way to feel comfortable in life.
So what if I say, okay, I'm going to try to go and take a class on learning this instrument, or I'm going to go and put myself out there on a dating website and I don't feel comfortable, but I'm willing to push past the avoidance a little bit, but I'm going to just not pay attention to people that hurt my feelings or whatever.
So that might lead us into a conversation that is a second way, a second solution of adapting to this tension in life. So if avoidance is one solution, then the kind of other end of the spectrum solution is to try to control and just like control, over control, over control. I don't want to feel uncomfortable. So if I can control as much external and internal as possible, then I can engage with this thing that I want in my life in a way that allows me to not feel uncomfortable with it. So if I'm uncomfortable, I'm not controlling it hard enough. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So here I say, okay, I'm going to step out of my avoidance and I'm going to go out this date, or I'm going to go to this group date thing. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to control how I respond, and I'm going to control who I talk to. And then I'm going to be just a pain in the neck.
Where we go, what we eat, how we meet, who I choose. Yeah.
And then you don't make a real connection because you're controlling. Yeah. And then somebody sees you controlling and they're like, I don't want to go out with this person again.
So you just said it so beautifully that you're just trying to make a connection with someone. And because it's uncomfortable to initiate that and to deepen that, you try to control it so you can get the connection and feel comfortable. But the attempt of controlling all facets of it just deepens how detached you are, that you are not connecting with the person. You are connecting with this kind of like perfect version of circumstances. And it serves as a barrier to connecting who you genuinely are with who the other person genuinely is, to see if there's a match there.
Right.
So
it's not real. Yeah.
It's not real. Yeah. And so it will seem to get you a little ways in there, but it will block the genuineness. And you will, again, end up with not the thing that you intended for, which is connection.
So if I'm trying to step out of my avoidance and I make myself go out, but I know that I'm feeling really tense and my natural tendency is to control. I don't think that I control a lot of stuff, but I think I kind of do, and I don't know I do. And I'm probably using control to mask my avoidance issues. But, how would I know if I'm doing it, and how can I stop myself from doing it? What makes it hard to do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it's like a line in the sand, right? Sometimes avoidance is a really good strategy. If something's really dangerous, I would say you should avoid that.
Oh, yeah.
And if you have some things that are meaningful in your life that you want to pursue, I think you should apply some control. Like if you want that degree, I think you should sign up for the class. I think you should study. I think you should apply the amount of control that will be adaptive and effective. So for the patients that come into the clinic, they've just overdone it. It's like they found a strategy that works in some ways sometimes, and they pinned it down a little too hard. So they're using avoidance a little too often. They are trying to control a little bit too much. So it is a constant analysis in life about what's the right balance, what's the right note at this particular moment.
What if I'm scared and I'm trying to control just out of fear? How do I let that go if I'm in a situation like a new social setting?
Yeah. So the let go strategy is what we would call willingness. Okay. So if you want meaningful things in your life, you have
to get uncomfortable.
Regretfully, right?
Yeah.
I know which is not kind of the message we all would love to hear, but meaningful things in our life require discomfort. They do. And so it's the willingness to make decisions about how important this thing is for you, and how willing you are to do to put the things in place to get it and to weave it into your life.
Okay.
So,
if I come to you and I say, I'm really trying to do better at work, right? Which I think a lot of people I talk to, I have a problem with my boss, but I'm afraid to confront this person. I haven't had a change in my environment and I need to get a raise. I haven't had a raise in 3 years, but I'm scared and I've just been avoiding it for 3 years now. And obviously I'm not getting anywhere, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to demand this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, but I'm really scared. I don't know what they're thinking. What are some of the ways that I can control what's going to happen, but also allow it to happen? Because that's what I'm scared of, is the unknown.
Yeah, that's what we're all scared of, the unknown.
I guess so.
The uncertainty, that is really at the crux of most of the things I talk about every single day.
Oh, yeah.
Is that as human beings, we don't like uncertainty.
No.
There's potential threat in uncertainty. And that's the problem, is that uncertainty is threaded through our lives almost like every moment of every day. We have to be willing to tolerate uncertainty and to walk this balance between leaning in to what we want without trying to over control. So the example that you gave, I think, was really good. So there was 3 years of avoidance in asking for a raise, promotion, right, at work.
Yeah.
And then after that long, or whenever, you can flip. What you described as flipping into the opposite, which is over control. I'm going to charge in there.
Yeah. I finally got the guts after 3 years, right? Yeah. I'm going to go for it.
You have all this pent up energy, and then it can flip into over control.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to back down, and I'm going to demand, and I'm going to try to control, and I'm
bringing a lot of emotions into it that I've built up over 3 years, which that's going to explode all over the place potentially.
Yeah. Would you like to do a short exercise that kind of speaks to that point?
Oh, sure. I guess. Why not?
All right. So there's this quick exercise. Let me ask you a few questions.
Okay.
And that your listeners can be kind of answering these questions for themselves too.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Okay. I got a notepad and a pen. All right, let's try it.
Oh, it's not that complicated.
Okay.
What's your favorite food?
My favorite food is king crab legs.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So if you could eat anything right now, it would be these king crab legs.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And, for your listeners, think about your own favorite food and think about why that would just be so good in this moment. Like your king crab legs, why do you like them?
They just taste amazing. There's nothing else in the world that tastes like them. And when they're fresh and not salty and cooked perfectly and dipped in butter, they're the best thing ever.
Yeah. All right. So not salty. They're cooked. What's perfectly cooked?
Soft and springy and not chewy and salty.
Yeah. Okay. And they're dipped in butter.
They're
is that?
Butter delivery device. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So what's the texture again?
Soft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And springy, not chewy and tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the temperature? Perfect king crab leg?
A little warmer than room temperature.
Yeah. Okay. So
now you're making me think about it. Yeah.
I know. Everybody has this idea of their food, right?
Yeah.
And all about the food. And can you just
close
and really visualize it? Almost taste that food?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's your favorite food. You're starving at this point, right? Yeah. I want you to now not think about it.
It's really
Whatever
hard.
you do for the next, let's just do this for 10 seconds. Whatever you do for the next 10, 15 seconds, just do not think about the king crab legs. Do not think about your favorite food.
Okay.
Nothing.
I've been meditating. It's working a little. Okay. Yes. Okay, I'm not thinking about it.
So I'll end the silence there. But you can do this exercise on your own.
Oh, great.
People usually, when I introduce this exercise, it's just a little illustrative moment. When I introduce the exercise, when I say, now don't think about the king crab legs, most people laugh at me, right?
I did.
Are you serious? What you just planted it into my head in such a big salient way.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about in terms of like what's meaningful in your life is much more meaningful than like the king crab legs. And to try to close it out, to try to avoid it. So when you tried to avoid thinking about the king crab legs, what happened? How did you do it? What happened? Were you successful? Tell me about your experience.
I do meditate, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast. This is funny because I'm very visual. When you said that, I kind of closed my eyes and I went to this meditative state, and I tried to pull a veil over my thoughts and tried to separate my thoughts from the king crab legs, but it was hard.
Yeah.
And then just continue to refocus. But these are techniques I learned through meditation, and it is hard. And now it lingers in the background, and I'll probably think about it several times today, but realizing, like you said, I love the point you made, that it seems like a big thing and you made it very succulent and fresh in my mind, but it's the king crab leg thoughts are not as important as the important things that are going on in my life.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what you experienced is typical in terms of what the reactions people get when they're trying to manage emotions in their life, that if you're trying to avoid the emotion, nothing makes it stickier. If you're trying to avoid a thought, like a thought about yourself or a thought about how you are with other people, or something that's very tender and scary to you, the more you try to push it away, the clingier it gets to you. So avoiding thoughts is the surefire way to make them sticky.
So how would you frame that? Say, for example, you dated somebody. I know I'm going back to this dating thing, but you dated somebody, or you lost connection with somebody you care about and you can't quit thinking about that person, or you lost a big sale. And I know people in real estate and mortgages, and they had a client they worked with and that person went away, and you feel there's a sense of loss and betrayal, and you have these overwhelming feelings, but you have a list of stuff you've got to do. How does somebody... You told me to just forget about it. Are there steps to follow for somebody to cut that feeling off and try to refocus on the important things?
There are not ways to cut the feeling off, right? So avoiding it makes it stickier, and over controlling it. So some people come back to me with that exercise saying like, I tried to make my grocery list. I tried to count from 0 to 100. I tried to over control it. And at the end of the day, like it just still kind of like pops back in. And so how do you pursue the meaningful things in your life, relationships and work? You reorient to that present focus, not like non-judgmental perspective of, I'm really nervous about this thing, and I'm going to approach it while being nervous and being willing to feel nervous and to tolerate the nervousness as I'm doing it.
Being aware that you're going to have nerves, they exist, have them exist out there, kind of like the crab legs are going to exist in my day, have them over there, but go about it willingly anyways.
Yeah. So that you refocus not on trying to get rid of the emotion through avoidance or control. You focus on the productive thing, like this is what I want in my life, and I'm willing to tolerate when uncomfortable things show up because I'm still on my path to getting the meaningful things in my life. I'm prioritizing the meaning over the comfort.
And making that conscious decision. And if you're struggling to make a conscious decision to overcome the avoidance or the control, and you've tried, then maybe it's time to start looking for a professional to help you with that. Like you would go to the gym to get a personal trainer to help you with that, or maybe a dietitian to help you figure out what's going on with your body. Get somebody who's a professional helping you manage emotion.
Exactly. There's a lot of healthcare targets that are less stigmatized than our mental health. And, I wish that wasn't the case, but it is no different than going to a dietitian, a nutritionist, personal trainer, a physical therapist. It's all the same. It's just healthcare. You're just getting like professional advice by the people who put in the hours to gain the expertise so that you don't have to. You can just get it packaged nicely and efficiently for yourself.
Yeah.
It's the same with mental health. It doesn't need to be any more threatening or bigger than that. It doesn't say anything more about you as a person.
Well, I love that you stated very clearly, you don't have to sign up for this for the next 5 years and get this, therapy where you're just communicating. There are systems and coursework. And so should people look for specifically CBT techniques or a practitioner in their state?
Yes. I think that there's a series of books called Treatments That Work. So that's one avenue where you can get some of these packages in a way that's not engaging with a clinician, or you can look up networks in your own state. Usually you would be getting services from a professional that's licensed in your own state. It can be challenging to navigate our healthcare system. You can start with who's covered on your insurance, or you can start with like the organization ABCT. The Association of Behavioral and Cognitive Therapies has a online referral network that you can look through and be relatively assured that you're getting someone who is trained in behavior therapy. That might be another way to go in seeking out the right services for you.
I love the idea that, okay, you're going in for your colonoscopy. We go in for mammograms. We get checkups. And, I had an esthetician one time. I was going in to get a facial, and they were trying to make the point to me that you need to keep your skin, your largest organ on your body, healthy. And getting this kind of work is the same as going to the gym. And if we look at our mind as the same way, there's nothing wrong with you if you need support. We're all being inundated with so much information every day. We weren't built for this. So to decipher and break it down, sometimes a professional is the best choice.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. And I'm going to have all this stuff in the notes, the ABCT, the networks in your state, the books, Treatments That Work, as well as that book on the mindful way through anxiety. So this has been, I think, really great because it's in alignment with what a lot of people are being fed on YouTube. There's a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of people who started out as neuroscientists, and we all know Andrew Huberman. And all of a sudden I see him on an HRT podcast with another guy. And I'm like, okay. So there's a lot of information out there about a lot of things. I'm just really glad that I know you and you're trained in this. And when we talk to you about it, it's coming from somebody who has the knowledge base and the years of experience treating people that are overcoming these problems. And I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thanks for hosting me.
Of course. And maybe we can lure you back because I bet you have a lot of topics to help with all the people you work with. So hopefully we can have you back on.
Maybe so. Yep.
Well, thank you, everybody. And we'll catch you next time on Throw Off the Lines. Have a total day. Thank you for joining me on Throw Off the Lines. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe for future episodes and extras, and leave a review, share it with someone who needs a total inspiration. You can also find us on Facebook or Instagram and our Throw Off the Lines website. If you want to be a guest or have questions for the host, sign up on the website and we'll get back to you. Until next time, throw off those lines and live your best life.